Welcome to Uniting the Cults. This is another episode of Why is Everybody Stupid, episode 91. Somebody asked, how do I move forward? What is the default position on God? And I thought this was a very important question, and I think it's going to help you guys a lot uh, when I show you how this connects to some deeper ideas. So I'm going to be discussing another post after this one. Um, so I replied, the default position to any question. So first, you notice I'm calling this a question, the position on God. Like, is there a God? Uh, Treating that as a question. And the answer is, if your default answer is before you know anything is, I don't know the answer. And that's true for any question. The first time you think of a question before you have the answer, you have to say, I don't know the answer. And for most questions, the vast majority of questions, there's no hurry to find the answer. There are some cases where there's a hurry, like, I don't know, let's say somebody's dying. Let's say somebody took some poison by accident, and the answer you need within a few minutes is how to get them help, how to give them the cure or whatever before they die from the poison. And for a lot of people, it is, hey, let's take them to the hospital because we're pretty sure the doctors have the answer. But there's, most questions you don't need. There's no hurry to find the answer. There's no, threshold. There's nothing's going to change. No consequences are going to happen if you don't have the answer right now. Plenty of things, like little stuff in your life, you don't worry about not having the answer yet because you have, in lots of cases, let's say it's going to take you 5 years before it's going to matter, and so 5 years before that happens, you're not worried about it because you're pretty sure you'll get the answer before the time comes. But on the question of God, so what category is that in? Is it the question that you need to hurry up and have the answer, or is it okay to wait? Well, I think the answer is you can wait. There's no hurry. What's going to happen if you, like, here's one way to think of it. Ask the question, what is going to happen if you don't have the answer now? And my answer to that question is nothing. So my guess as to why some people do feel hurried to have the answer is that they have a fear of hell already. And that was indoctrinated into them by their parents before they knew how to think critically. They were traumatized, and now they're experiencing PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Anytime they think of the God question, or anytime they hear a miracle claim, or anytime they hear adhan, or anytime they hear anything or see anything or get any sense data that triggers a memory of Islam and their question, what if I'm wrong, which they keep asking all the time. And so this person that asked this question also asked, but where do I go from there? I've already accepted that there will never be an answer given for these things from an Islamic view, but what can I even do now? And I think what she's expressing, or he, is that, they feel like or think they need to have the answer now. And they're not accepting the answer of I don't know. By the way, for me, it's not I don't know. I believe I do know there is no God, but I have a lot of knowledge beyond what was presented in this person's post or whatever this person is thinking. This person doesn't know. You can clearly tell because from the way they're talking. So my answer to her was, to him, I don't know. You can learn from the great thinkers that came before you. Like, if you want to continue your pursuit in figuring out the answer to the question, is there a God? Well, you can go learn from people before you. You don't have to do it all on your own. Um, if you really want to do a study of it, go listen to what every single other person ever said about it. Instead of what many of us were doing, was we were only believing and looking at one theory, that Islam is the truth, and we ignored all other things. We didn't listen to anyone else. We didn't even consider or question. But if you want to figure out whether there's a God or not, you should go listen to everyone talking about God, including the atheists, obviously, and I guess the agnostics and whoever else. Or the other thing you can do is put a pin in that for now and focus your attention on other stuff, and come back to the God question if you want in the future. Maybe you're busy now thinking about physics, like the Big Bang or something. Let's say you want to research that. Put your time into that instead. Maybe you want to spend time researching something you're doing regarding your work, your career, your business. Spend time doing that instead. So then they asked, what would you recommend in terms of religious rituals like prayers? And then I said, I would ask myself why I need them. Like for teeth brushing, I know why I should brush my teeth, to maintain the health of my teeth and gums. So I keep doing this ritual. I don't know of any good reasoning for praying or any other religious rituals. Not to say that praying doesn't have any value. Maybe it does if it's done in certain ways. I know about meditation, which seems like, some people who are praying are getting some of the effects that meditation gives. Okay, so to my other post now. So two kinds of people, or two kinds of thinking modes that people have. Thinkers and believers. The thinkers, their thoughts exist as answers to questions, and they're flexible in updating their answers and the questions. They know that any of their answers or questions could be replaced with a better one. And let me add another thing to this. They're not in a hurry to finding answers to their questions. Some of their questions, they start when they're 5 years old, and they're still thinking about that question when they're 40, and they're still improving the answer to their question. Example for me, why is everybody stupid is a question I started thinking when I was 5 years old, and I'm still answering the question now. I'm still figuring out the answer to the question. I have an answer, and maybe it's somewhat good, but I'm making progress on it. Believers, their thoughts exist as answers divorced from their questions. So they have a bunch of answers in their head, but they don't have the questions in their heads, or at least they're not attached. Those answers are not attached to the questions. So like if you had a database and you look up, where is the question that this answer came from? It says, sorry, not here, deleted, or it was never saved. So in this scenario, there's no reasonable way to update your answers because they exist independent of the questions that generated them. In the thinker's case, it's easy to update an answer. Just look up the question and ask it again. You might have new information this time compared to the last time you considered that question. And people are mixed. They can operate as thinkers for some stuff and as believers for other stuff. But the point is, in general, we're doing this for a lot of things. So if you're a thinker in one area, you're probably a thinker in many, many areas of your thinking. But of course, we do compartmentalize a little bit. There are people who, so I'm going to call this the method being used by the believers is faith, and the method used by the thinkers is reason. And there's people who use the faith method for God and use reason for everything else. There's lots of physicists that do that and physicians. And so I say here, how can a thinker help a believer? What you got to do is help people, when you're discussing with them, help them focus on the questions more than the answers. And that's something that comes from the Socratic method. It's well known as the birth of the scientific approach. It's a process of hypothesis generation and elimination. So the teacher asks questions to the students. The teacher expects that the students could potentially create better answers than the teacher has. More so than that, the teacher is not supposed to provide their answers. Why? The teacher's answers don't really matter. What matters is helping the student learn how to think and to create their own answers. This is the only way, because the alternative is for the student to try to copy the teacher's answers, and that copying is not very good. So the student ends up with a worse version of the teacher's answer. It's the same thing that Einstein warned against when he was talking about how school works. He talked about the difference between learning by memorizing and learning by understanding. Learning by memorizing is, just trying to get by with memorizing some rules and formulas and not really knowing where or when they work, but kind of applying them randomly, arbitrarily, and a lot of times getting it right just because the test is so easy or whatever. But then when you're in the real world, real life, you have no idea what you're doing. You're doing everything wrong because you were just memorizing. You have no idea how to tell when to use the rules that you learned, when is the appropriate way, how to even use the rules. You have to learn a whole bunch of logic that you didn't learn. And learning by understanding is doing all those things. Learning all the logic, trying to understand why everything works the way it works, why everything is connected, why everything has to be one way and not some other way. Now, getting back to the original post and clearly showing you the connection. So at least, what's good here, this person is expressing that they are now thinking about the question. Okay. What is the answer to the question, is there a God? But you can tell from the way they're thinking that they're used to just having answers. They're accustomed to, they want the answer now. They asked, what should I do about my religious rituals? It's just stuff you're doing now. None of this is about critical thinking or questions or getting answers to anything. This is a philosophical approach. Where this is, it's the opposite of philosophy. If I was to say what is the opposite of philosophy in one sentence, it's doing what people before you did without ever questioning why you're doing it or why they did it. And that's what they were doing too. It reminds me of a psychology experiment done with chimps. Let me see if I can find it.
A scientist placed 4 monkeys in a room with a stepladder upon which there was a bunch of bananas. Whenever a monkey went to climb the ladder, the other monkeys in the room were sprayed with cold water. After a while, each time a monkey went for the bananas, the others would attack it to prevent it from doing so. The monkeys learnt to never climb the ladder. But then, one of the monkeys was removed, and a new monkey wearing a raincoat was introduced. Naturally, this monkey went for the bananas, and it was customarily attacked and prevented from doing so by the others. This new monkey learnt not to climb the ladder. So when another monkey was substituted in and made for the bananas, all the others attacked it, including the one in the raincoat. despite the fact that it had never been sprayed with cold water. A third monkey was substituted in, and then a fourth final monkey. And still, whenever a monkey tried to climb the ladder, the others would prevent it from doing so, even though none of them had ever been sprayed with the cold water. When asked why this was, one monkey said, "That's just the way it is."
That is what happens when you're not doing philosophy. It is the opposite of philosophy. And that's the same thing described here. Being a believer instead of a thinker, or your mind operating within that mode. It's a mode of thinking, or lack of thinking in this case. All right, so that's it then.